Welcome to Sexy Sunday, where we analyze sex scenes from films and TV shows, discuss what they tell us about the story, the characters, and more importantly, whether they're hot or not. I'm Jessica.
I'm Anishka.
And this is Sexy Sunday.
Today we're going to talk about porn and sex scenes and decide which ones are hotter. And we'll see where it takes us, because none of us have planned for this because we're both ill and not feeling great. So that should be an interesting one.
Yes. Might be a little bit chaotic, but who cares? We are chaotic people.
We are agents of chaos. So there you go.
I like that, agents of chaos.
So I'll just start by
Okay.
saying straight away, sex scenes are way hotter than porn.
Yeah.
Like 100%. So me and Jess watched Deep Throat last week, the super famous 80s, 70s, 80s
70s.
porn, 70s porn film. And I did not know what to expect at all.
Yeah.
And it was such high production value. And also because it's film, because it's like the 70s, it looks so nice. Like, even though they probably didn't have that much money in the grand scheme of things, it just looks like dreamy and like old, so nice.
Yeah.
And the story was taking so long to like get into place, and characters have a lot of things to say, and I was like, oh, this is like more like maybe an erotic film or something. Like, I kind of forgot what I was watching until like suddenly I saw a close-up on like a dick going inside a vagina, and I was like, oh no, this is porn.
And I think also because Deep Throat is an hour long.
Oh my god, it's so long.
It's so long. I was so taken aback because I just assumed it'd be like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But people's attention span was a lot different back in the 70s.
So yeah, I think it was really interesting, and it kept on like taking me out of it, like the sex scenes, even though they're not quite the same as like sex scenes in porn nowadays, because they've got music over them, so you don't actually hear anything. You don't hear the people.
No, and there was none of that like super over the top moaning or like very, very aggressive sex that you kind of see more nowadays in porn.
Yeah. Also, I was really surprised because you kind of have an idea of what women's bodies looked like in the 70s, and one of the girls was like completely shaved.
Yeah, I noticed.
And people are always saying like, obviously that's not like, that's a new thing, or like new from the last 20 years or whatever, but clearly it's not.
Yeah, I was surprised too, because you think of the 70s as like the like hippie revolution and whatnot, and you've got like just women's hair everywhere. But even the hair that you did see on one of the women, it was still like super shaved back. And did you feel like some of the scenes went on really long? Like with her, especially when Linda was deep throating the doctor.
The doctor, yeah, it went on for ages.
Yeah.
I mean, it is an hour-long film, so they had to stretch the scenes out, I guess. They probably didn't want to write that much dialogue, so they were like, this is going to be a real film with a lot of sex. Very long sex scenes.
You know, fair enough. But I also find like with sex scenes in movies, because you rarely see genitalia. It's mainly like the build-up. But then when you do in porn see genitalia, some of them just really ugly. Like,
yeah, like I'd say most of them.
Yeah, I'm being nice here. I don't know.
And it's very rarely attractive guys as well.
Yeah. Like,
although Matthew McConaughey was in this one. 70s porn star version of Matthew McConaughey, so.
Alright, sure. Well, you keep on with that fantasy. That
it totally it looked like his what is it called? True Detective self.
Actually, yeah, no, you did show me pictures, and it was true that he did look very similar. I will give you that.
I'll take it. This is the only reason to watch Deep Throat, is so you can decide whether he does or does not look like Matthew McConaughey.
Or even just like a flick back at what porn used to be. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, it is quite interesting.
And also weird to think that people went to the movies to watch porn.
Mhm. Yeah, that I would not have wanted to be sat in a screen with like 45 people around me watching those interminable sex scenes, like not even sex scenes, just close-ups of genitalia. Like I would literally not know where to look. Like why do people want to watch this with other people? But then I guess at the time they didn't have a choice. Like obviously they weren't going to like stream it on the internet, so
True.
what else would they do?
True. And like I feel like still then like home TV sets probably were for like if you could afford it.
Well, yeah, and like that's kind of the whole thing with Boogie Nights in it, when they're like, oh, we want to start doing VHS tapes.
Yeah.
And the guy is like, that's ruining everything. We want films in the cinema. Like it's just, yeah, it probably wasn't even a thing at all at this time. So they didn't really have a choice. They had to go to the group wank sessions.
But do you think there would be this guys like jacking off like in the open?
Yeah, 100%.
Oh my god, that makes me so uncomfortable. Like,
Yeah, but what do you think they're doing? Like, do you think they're just going and like getting everything in their brain and then wait until they get home?
no,
Like,
I guess not. But I don't know. It's just a different time, I guess.
yeah. But also, like, I don't know. Like, I always think about that thing where like the Beatles said they used to like all get in circles and like wank off. And it's just like people do weird things, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've got a point there. You have a point there.
But yeah, I think I was a bit disappointed with Deep Throat because I thought it was more going to be an erotic film than, and I know,
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought that because I knew it was porn, but I guess I just assumed because it was the 70s it was going to be a bit more romanticized, when actually apart from the higher production value and a bit more of the story and the fact it was longer, it was basically like porn nowadays. Like, yeah, things were different, there was music, as we said, etc., but in terms of what we would see on the screen, it was very much like porn now. Whereas I thought it was going to be like sexier.
I know what you mean, especially with like, because we also watched Lovelace, which is like the story of Linda Lovelace who starred in Deep Throat. And when they were talking about how it was like revolutionizing the film industry and the porn industry, I also assumed that it was like, because they were like, we don't just want like the guy to come and that's done. We want to keep people in their seats. Wait, maybe that was Boogie Nights. Was it Boogie Nights?
That was Boogie Nights, actually.
Getting all
But in
mixed up.
Lovelace, they say we want to go back to like we don't want it to just be we shoot a couple, they're having sex and that's it. We want like to make a real film where we understand like what the story is. So basically, both of the films kind of said a similar
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Okay, so then when I watched it, when I was watching it, I did assume as well that it wouldn't be so porn heavy, even though it was on Pornhub. And like
Which is a slight giveaway.
but you know, like, because you do think, like, back in the 70s, when they're trying to do something a bit more revolutionary, you think, oh, yeah, it would have maybe leaned more on the erotic side, more on the romantic side, trying to do something a little bit different. But it didn't feel very different. It was a shame. It would have been funny to see, like, because obviously Boogie Nights is more made up, fictional. Boogie Nights is more fictional, but I would have still really liked to see what their pornos were that they made, like with Mark Wahlberg and John C. Reilly. I really like their violent ones. I really wanted to see what their pornos would have turned out to be.
Yeah, it would have been nice if they released like as a. Ooh, actually, I've got the DVD. I should check if that's like a feature or something. 'Cause that would be really fun if they actually filmed a full episode and they just released it as a bonus.
That would be fun. Yeah.
But yeah, because I think because we watched Boogie Nights and Lovelace as well last week, and basically we recorded an episode talking about those two and Deep Throat, and then at the end of the episode we were like, this wasn't really good. No offense to ourselves, but this was a bit boring.
It's not our best.
And I think it's because none of those had actual proper sex scenes that we could analyze.
Yeah.
Like all the sex scenes that you see in Boogie Nights are the ones that are in the porn they're shooting. So it's not the characters really. There's nothing to analyze. It's not telling us much about who Eddie is or who like whoever is. Like it's just all about the character. It's the characters playing characters in porn. So it wasn't that interesting as a let's analyze sex scenes of this film point of view. And then Lovelace was kind of similar. Like a lot of there's not actually that many sex scenes in Lovelace.
No, and I think also with Lovelace it was more to do with like her coercion and
Yeah.
like the horrific kind of relationship that she
She was
had
in. Yeah.
with whatever his name was, Chuck.
Chuck. Mhm.
And also like the porn as well. But it was because both of those movies are sort of about the porn industry. There's nothing that's like, because what we enjoy about sex scenes is the build up, the sexual tension, kind of the like way that it informs us about who the characters are, like in a way that is like, we hark back to Industry, but honestly Industry is one of the best that we've watched in terms of like
In terms of
sex.
sex scenes, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
and we learned so much about Yasmin through her like
Her sexual behavior, like whether it's like when she's having sex or when she's flirting or
exactly, or like the way she performs sex rather than like
mm,
actually knows what she wants, and you can get so much from these subtle movements of her character through her performance, which is a really like and the sex scenes really add to that because you're not telling the audience, oh well, she's like this, that's why she's doing this. Whereas like obviously with porn, like the point of it is to get off on it. So there's not gonna be a lot of build up there. And
mm,
I think even when I've watched porn when there's been like it's been slightly more romantic or like for women in big quotation marks because
yeah, yeah,
uh it's still been like how quick you can actually get to the sex. And I think that's the thing is like with sex scenes in movies, you can really have that longer build up, or in TV shows I should say, that longer
yeah.
build up because you get that like development between the characters, so it feels more realistic and romantic, so that when they do go to have sex, even though you don't always see everything, there's enough there that you're intrigued and somewhat turned on, but like it's not a all right, I'm watching this specifically to get off.
Well, there's this director called Erika Lust, who's a porn director, and she makes very like sex positive,
Mm.
female focused films. And my friend told me that there's a lot more build up with her films.
Ooh.
But the only way you can, well, at least from what I've found out trying to look for them, the only way you can see her films is if you pay, and I'm poor and decided not to spend a little bit of money I have on porn when I can spend it on clothes. But but that's just me. But yeah, so I think there is definitely like, obviously it'll be super niche and it's definitely not mainstream porn that everyone watches, but I think there is a, what do you call it, like a space for that, I think. But also just the fact that you just, in sex scenes in films and TV shows, no matter how realistic they are or how you're like, wow, they're naked and they're going at it and it looks like, is this porn or is this a TV show? Like, definitely when I was watching the first season of Bridgerton, there were points where I was like, man, the sex scene is taking ages. Like, I feel like I'm
Yeah.
there. But then when I watch porn, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm reminded of what the difference is. And it's just like sex scenes are literally pretty. They're
Yeah.
made to be like making sex and the actors and everything look good. And not just because it's like an amazing build up and we've been waiting for ages or anything. Well, in the case of Bridgerton, it is, but like in loads of other cases, it can be literally a one night stand with two characters you've never seen before, but it always will look, even when it's really grim, even when it's not supposed to make you feel good about it, it's stylized, whereas porn is not stylized. It's literally, let's put a camera the closest possible to their genitals so that we can see just it going in and out repeatedly.
Yeah.
And it's just not and obviously I get that that's what gets a lot of people off. But to me that's not anywhere near as sexy as like the stylized version of it.
Yeah. No, you're so right. Because you can't, like, again, with porn, the objective is to get off on it. So it's like all the angles that you use and everything. It's just like, how many different ways can we see penis and vagina, or penis in different orifices? And whereas obviously with movies and TV shows, it's like a whole different thing where you're telling a story. But I feel like even I mean, I haven't seen anything that's not like a free porn. I'd be quite intrigued to watch something that's like actually behind a paywall to see the difference. Even ones with a storyline, it feels like the story is so loose and
Yeah.
so yeah, it doesn't really serve a purpose besides how quickly can we
No.
get to the sex.
Yeah, because like I don't know if you know Stoya, but she's like a porn star. She's also like the one of the prettiest girl in the universe, and she's got like a prescription. She doesn't have a prescription. She's got a subscription only website that she's like making films for, and I think they're quite focused on like the girl and blah 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 blah. But there's one of the films that is called Stoya Unsuspected. Which I think we can all appreciate this title. And that
Always appreciate
I'm pretty
pun.
sure that's oh yeah, always. I'm pretty sure that's an hour long actually, thinking back on it. And just comparing this to Deep Throat is just like the production value is insane. But obviously it's like how much of this is just due to the fact that again in the 70s they had to film on film, which straight away looks better.
Yeah.
And like what was Stoya Unsuspected was just like it looks really flat and it looks really cheap, even though they're in a massive mansion, and it's like I don't know why it's just not working. And they tried to make it a storyline where it's like she's at her sister's, and then I can't really remember what happens, but because my favorite bit was when she was having sex at the end with the like the pizza delivery guy. So I used to skip the rest of the film because I thought everyone was very unattractive in it apart from Stoya. So I can't quite remember the storyline, but basically it was doing the same thing as Deep Throat is doing, which is let's half-ass the storyline, drag it out for an hour, interrupted with loads of like obviously super graphic because it's porn, but like sex scenes.
Also, the storyline of Deep Throat being that
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous, the fact that her clitoris is in her throat.
But I kind of appreciate this more because it's like, you know what, you went all out with the absurdity. Like I'm kind of that'll make me laugh more than just like, ooh, my sister's boyfriend, she's out of the flat. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Like, at least they went like full in for the absurdity and like really lean into it, which you appreciate.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what's fun about it.
That was just hilarious. I love that scene. I thought it was just so funny. And because it's the 70s, they're super like, I mean, I don't know if it's because it's 70s or just because it's porn, but they're really over the top with it.
Yes.
I think also one thing that's like an obvious big difference between porn and sex scenes, I mean, apart from the obvious they're actually having sex in porn and they're not in sex scenes, is kind of what I said earlier about it's just like in movies everything has a meaning. Like if they're doing, which is literally why we're doing this podcast, like if they're doing a certain position, if they're shot a certain way, like if the camera's super close to them and it really shows you like how intimate it is, or if it's like really like in American Psycho where you're very far to them and it's all like clinical and it's not, there's no connection, and like there's just so much that sex scenes say in movies, and every single shot like detail is thought about, whereas obviously with porn I doubt, like I feel like that's not the way porn is made. I mean, I've watched a few documentaries about the way porn is made, and they're literally like, and then you have sex, and maybe they've got pointers about like this is what you do in terms of act and positions, but it's not going to like translate some emotional reason why they're doing doggy. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. It's not going to tell us any deeper meaning about the characters, because also whenever you see titles of porn, especially on the free porn sites, it's like hot 18-year-old virgin gets slammed, but the character is sort of the horny girl. Like it's not there's no deeper meaning to the movie itself, like porno itself.
Yeah. Even when they try and they drag it out for an hour.
And I think even with like Boogie Nights and Lovelace, it's like the sex scenes in that were just to show like more context to the porn industry, and sort of, especially in Boogie Nights where he has sex with Roller Girl and then with Amber. It was more to do with like his progression into being like a fully fledged porn star and showing what he can do and like how big his dick was, rather than anything about like who he was to them, and like, yeah, who he is as a person. I guess who he is as a person is someone that wants to get notoriety and whatnot, but there was nothing deeper to it. So it was really
No.
interesting that with those movies about porn, that the sex scenes weren't very colorful, I guess, if you know what I mean.
Well, I mean, in Boogie Nights, I genuinely don't think we have any.
I guess because you don't really see properly.
Yeah, I
'Cause-
wouldn't say you know they're gonna have sex, but it's not really like you don't see them having sex.
Well, I guess with like when he's having sex with Amber, I really like how the camera sort of pans to everyone sitting behind
Yeah.
the camera, and you do also see that guy's wife always getting.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Always having sex with everyone except for her husband.
Yeah, that's my wife. I really enjoyed those.
I love
But
it.
again, that was to show us like the absurdity of the porn industry rather
Yeah.
than like anything to do with their character.
No,
I
yeah. Yeah, it's not like we're analyzing his wife's personality. I mean, yeah, she's obviously a bit of a selfish dickhead, but I don't think we're doing like we're seeing this through the position they chose to put her in.
Yeah.
Like,
To sort of tangent slightly, like what would you say like when you see like character genitalia, like for example in industry, in like TVs and TV shows and movies, do you feel like that takes you out of it, or are there moments where it's done well where you feel yeah you enjoy it?
I think it takes me out of it, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it can be justified. But I do think I don't know, it's just that kind of like that's just me being a child, but I think you'll just always get a bit excited. Like when I see a girl taking a bra like without a bra on screen, I'm always like, haha, boobs. Like, fun. And I'm definitely not as excited by seeing like random penises because I don't think they're as nice looking as boobs. But I'm kind of more like, ooh, interesting. Because also I think we're not as used to see penises on screen, and I've seen
Yeah.
a lot of dicks on screen recently. Like Euphoria had a lot, like a lot. Industry had a couple. Obviously Boogie Nights has one.
You see a lot more boobs because you can show boobs in like a 15
Yeah.
rated movie.
Yeah, because ultimately girls are like topless on the beach. Like it's not, whereas you have to go to a very special beach if you want to be bottomless. Like boobs, as much as people are trying to make it into a thing and like Instagram won't let you put them on and blah blah blah, like ultimately boobs are pretty chilled.
Exactly. Are just balls of fat with nipples on them. Right,
Exactly.
let me write your
This is-
erotica for you.
Wow, this is about as sexy as it gets, I think. But yeah, I think because I was thinking, like, as someone who wants to make films, I've always thought making a porn would be a lot of fun. Like, I always thought I'd be really into it. And actually, now thinking on it, like, really thinking about it, I think making a very sexual TV show or like even an erotic film or whatever would be really fun. But I think making porn would not amuse me at all.
Yeah. Because you'd
Because
have
I don't think it's got the creativity of like, ooh, and then this happens and that's really hot and that. It's literally just like, and then can we do a close-up on her like spitting his cum out? And I'm just like, this is not what I want to direct. And obviously no one's forcing me to.
you could direct your own thing that could be a cross between a porno and an erotica.
But that's what I mean. I think it'd just be straight erotica. Like I don't think it'd be porn at all because I don't think I would want the super close-ups on like genitalia like banging into each other, and I don't think I would want. I think I'd want like a really nice like build-up, and I want it to be all sexy because I think kind of like what we were talking about again, Bridgerton. I don't know why I'm bringing it back into the conversation so much, but obviously it was a very sex-heavy first season. Like what we were talking about was that when Daphne's looking at the Simon guy's forearms and she gets really turned on, and it's like those small things that turn people on. And even guys, like I know like yeah, boobs, bums, great, but if you ask any guys, there will be small things about a girl's body or what a girl does, like whether it's like girls putting their hair up or whatever it is. I think everyone's got all of those small things that turn people on. And that's what I think they should focus on. I'm going to rewrite all the porns. But I think that's what's sexy. And I think in two people having sex is not actually, again, I'm just talking for myself, but I don't find it very sexy. And I've never found porn to be a turn on ever. Like, I've never found it sexy at all. And I think it's like, I always find porn really fun to watch, but I watch it like I watch a comedy. Like, I literally laugh a lot. People having sex is usually not super pretty to look at.
Yes.
It's not actually really like appealing. But when you choreograph it and you make it all about, like, either when you're doing it yourself or if you have to watch it, if it's choreographed and it's all like, and then he grabs her hair and then she does this and he does that, then it's like, that's what sexy is, those small things that they each of them do. And that's the film I want to make. I don't know why I'm saying all this. Don't know where I'm going with all this, but there you go.
No,
If anyone wants to crowdfund my porn film.
No, your erotic film.
My erotic film.
No, I feel like you've touched on a really good point there, especially like, I think there's also a lot to be said about an emotional connection or like a friendship connection that also kind of builds on that level of like intimacy.
No, I don't care about that.
All right. Guess I'm bringing back away my point. Just want hot people. Oh yeah, you're just all about hot people having sex.
I'm all about the hot gays. No, but
Fighting this
obviously,
corner.
if there's a nice build up and you want them to get laid for a long time, then when they finally do, you're gonna be happier about it.
Yeah, but even I'd say with like Daphne and like, to go back to Bridgerton, but even with like Daphne and Simon, like, even though their storyline was a little bit like meh, they still had that build up of like sexual intimacy where he was like, yeah, like, touch yourself, like, what do you think of when you touch yourself, like that sort of thing that kind of builds that connection.
Yeah.
And I think that's when they do actually end up having sex, you become so invested in them as characters that for you as a watcher it becomes hotter. Whereas I don't think you can capture that same element unless it's your erotica that you're gonna write, but like in general porn you can't capture that same amount of build up. Yeah, because I think also with like close-ups, because porn is like, I haven't watched it in a long time, but when I did watch it, it was very aggressive. It's like, when you watch those, like for me, when I was watching those, I was like, that to me just feels like it would be painful. Like, this is not turning me on.
Like, obviously, there are some terrible porns where the girls are being completely exploited, but I think it's also important to say we know that there are porns where everyone's really happy.
Yeah.
And porn stars who are very happy doing what they're doing and stuff. Porn is great. It's great they exist because it gives so many people so much. And and obviously,
well, it gives sex workers jobs.
Exactly, like it's a win-win as long as everyone's happy. I just think it should be like better regulated to make sure everyone's happy.
And everyone gets paid fairly too.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what I was thinking is like, so many videos when you go on like YouPorn or whatever are like, what is it called? Not normal sex, but like just normal couple having sex. Like, so many videos that pop up are just about watching people like that are completely common and look normal. Like, I think we've really evolved. Obviously, some porn stars are still looking like this, but I think we've really evolved past the you have to be blonde and you have to have fake tits and etc. Like, Stoya has really small boobs. Like, Sasha Grey had really small boobs. Like, and loads of other girls are also like with similar builds, where it's not the classic what you picture when you picture a porn star kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I wonder why it is that people crave so much about watching people who basically look like, probably not look like them, but look like it could be them, it could be anyone. Do you think it's because our generation is so self-obsessed?
I don't know. I think it's maybe like more of a return to like, maybe it's self-obsession, like more returning to like wanting to see ourselves represented rather than like an unobtainable goal of like having plastic surgery or whatever to look a certain way. But I don't know if it would be self-obsession, more so like going back to our roots, because you see a lot, like, I guess they're more subcategories, but more hair and more like like a normal quote bodies. So I guess it's more like we don't want to just see the fancy pants people, we want to see like ourselves represented. But I don't think it's from like a self-involved way. I think it's more from like a comfort.
Mm.
But what are your
But
thoughts?
and do you think it ties in with what we were saying where I was like, I don't really understand the concept of just watching a close up of like a girl fingering another girl and you just see her hand like
Mm,
going back and forth, but are people just imagining what it would feel like? And it's like if the people kind of look like them, that helps them.
yeah, definitely. Because I think that's the thing. Like, you also we are a very lonely society.
Mm.
And I think that I like getting some sort of gratification or some sort of like that dopamine hit of like connection through watching porn. So seeing someone like who looks like you or you could fancy getting whatever fingered or having sex with um would sort of add on to that. Well, this is not just gratifying because I'm getting turned on by this, but I'm getting turned on because they look like me or I'm attracted to them.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's so interesting to me. I don't ever feel like I want to watch people who look like me. I'm like, I want to see people who are more attractive on my screen. Like, whether it's porn or just normal TV, I'm just like,
Yeah.
I don't, if I want to see people who look like me, I'll just go in real life.
Well,
But obviously,
you've
I understand
only
that's not
you've purely
the way
watched
it is.
porn from like an educational standpoint.
Yeah, taking notes. Yeah, I think it's ridiculous to think that there's nothing to learn from porn. Like there definitely is when you're like a young teen, like or like a teenager, or you've not had that much experience or whatever. Like there's definitely some things. Like there's definitely tips that you can pick up from porn, but like you also need to be clever enough to know which ones you don't want to pick up because. But I think it's just like good common sense, like what would actually be nice and what wouldn't.
That is true. That is true. Like, there's definitely stuff where you'd like see it on porn and then try it out, and you'd be like, oh no, that doesn't work.
But I think mostly I was really watching it for like the laughs. Like half the positions where they're standing up, the guy always ends up looking like a caveman because he's always like on
Yeah.
his tiptoes and his legs are bent and like his back's always like really round. And I'm like, this is literally like watching an animal having sex. Like this is amazing. This is the kind of thing that unless you're like filming yourself or having sex in front of a mirror, you're not really paying attention to because you're too busy having sex. And watching it as a third person just watching is you're like, sex is not hot.
That
This
is
is really
so
upsetting.
true. Like, it might be hot for the other person that you're having sex with, but to take it out of the context of you being the one to have sex or being in that context, it's not. You're just kind of like, oh, okay, these two people are having sex, but they also look a bit ridiculous.
Yeah. No, I know, no judgment, but yeah.
No, no judgment. You do what you need to do to earn your monies. Um, but
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, it's just because porn is like, again, going back to the fact that, everyone's got things that turn them on and no one controls what it is. Obviously, yeah, as I said, like, I think it's a shame that in porn you don't have the smaller details that are actually sexier. But at least you've got like categories of things that turn you on. And like it's no secret that many girls have like fantasies of being like abused or being like,
mm,
dominated in a really violent way that probably unless you're with a partner that you feel really safe with, you wouldn't even role play. Like you
yeah.
don't actually want it to happen in real life, but you want it because it turns you on. Like porn offers this to girls who are like turned on by those kind of things. Like I do think it's really, really good for loads of reasons. I just think it's like it'd be good if people could tell apart what is a fantasy and what is reality.
Yes. Yeah, and I think the problem is that you've got like because of these free sites, as I've said, like you in order to get noticed, it's having to do the more violent things over and over again, like
Mm.
or more extreme things. And because it's like through the free porn, you are not always sure if the actress or the woman is being treated right.
Yeah.
So like that's something that I've always struggled with and why I don't watch it anymore is because I'm never sure if that woman is actually enjoying herself or if she's like it's some sort of situation that's put her there, and it makes me feel very uncomfortable and takes me out of it. Like obviously to be in like a consensual thing where you're like we both want to explore this kind of violent fantasy together, that's a different story, but you never know the level of consent when you're watching something or like what's going
No,
on
of
behind
course.
the scenes. Like I would love if I could afford and watch like those subscription sites because I think then you definitely know that what you're watching is like a higher level of consent. But
Yeah,
I think
although
that
I'm saying this, but I feel like there was like some big controversy about Erika Lust a while ago. I can't remember what it
oh
was,
shit,
but yeah. So maybe you never know.
maybe you do never know, and that's
And to be honest, like you never know when you're watching films either. Like it doesn't seem like as much of a big
That's
deal because
true.
it's not, they're not put in sexual situations, but actually like some actresses are being like abused in psychologically or in other ways than like to do with sex on and some actors as well. Like you
That's
never know
such a
what's
good
going on behind the
point.
scenes when you're watching anything.
So I think nowadays we're much more like aware to that. But I think in porn, there's much, especially when you see where they're filming and you see these sort of drab sets that they're filming on, and you can kind of get a vibe. Like it just, I don't know, that level, I find it harder to suspend my disbelief there.
Yeah. No, I understand that, of course.
Yeah. But obviously, like I now, if I was to rewatch Kill Bill, for example, I knew how Uma Thurman, I now know how Uma Thurman was treated by Quentin Tarantino. That makes me feel very uncomfortable.
Mm.
I don't know if I'd be able to watch it in the same way as I did before. But yeah, I guess there is a certain level you've just got to trust what you're
Yeah,
watching.
exactly. There's nothing for us to rate.
No.
I was like
Oh, we
trying
could
to be
rate
like,
Deep Throat. How would you
we
rate
can
Deep
rate
Throat?
Deep Throat. That's true. I mean, I'm gonna give it like a 3 or something. Like I did not think it was hot at all.
No. I'm gonna go with a 3 as well. Like
Yeah,
it was
there
just
was no point that did it for me.
no, and I also felt like the sex scenes went on too long.
Yeah, agreed.
Or the porn scenes, I
Agreed.
should say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What are we talking about next week?
Feel like we're talking about chewing gum?
Yay!
I am very excited. I love Michaela Cole. I love the show. It's so funny and so good.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun one.
Oh, and
I
you
am
get
a little bit concerned about it though, only because I'm worried we're gonna have a Fleabag issue where because she talks to the camera, we do know what she's thinking, and so the sex scenes are difficult to analyze because there's not much to analyze.
I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we'll find out.
And we've got Jonathan Bailey to talk about, so you know.
No, maybe we'll do the whole episode just about his one episode. Fuck the rest of the show, no one cares. Let's just talk about him.
Yes, exactly.
Looking forward to it. All right, see you next time.
See you next time.